Recording. Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Astrology Unplugged. I'm Rick DiClemente. This is starself.com and our weekly show called Astrology Unplugged. If you've not been with us before, we've been on for almost 7 years now, and we talk about all things astrology. Sometimes we have guests. We try to do beginning astrology, intermediate astrology, advanced astrology, all kind of different subjects. And this is about something like show 317. So welcome aboard, Linda, and everybody else. Um, I'm going to get started with you. Let's get all the microphones muted. There we go. And what we've been doing recently is I've had a thought that now and then I like to come back and become very simple with astrology, then get more advanced and come because everybody's at different levels. And lately last week we did a show on becoming simple again. The show was called Why is Astrology So Difficult? And it is. There shall be. There shall be. See, she's a star of the show. Anyhow, astrology is really, really tough. And I was looking at where the planets are right now, and it's mesmerizing to look at to try to make any sense out of it. My heart is with you if you're trying. Um, and it is an art. It is an art. It is a skill that you have the talent for, or else you don't. Uh, Several things I wanted to mention to you. Last week, I talked a lot about the signs, the planets in the signs. And the book we wrote is a lot about the signs, and they're heavenly, all kinds of books about the signs. And there's some books about the houses. And the books about the houses are very confusing. And the books about the aspects are even more confusing. So I told you there's four main things in astrology. A planet is in a sign. It's also in a house, and it may or may not have aspects or angles to other planets. Well, the last two are the hard part. Planets in the signs aren't that difficult to understand, really. But when a planet is opposite one, or square to one, or trine to another, or it's in the fifth house, or it's in the ninth house, things start getting really complicated. So I'm not going to repeat myself this week about that particular subject. Hold one moment, please. So what I wanted to say to you is tonight I'm not going to spend a lot of time on planets and signs, and I'm going to talk more about houses and about aspects is a really confusing thing. And I wanted to remind you, I didn't look up where the aspects were, but past shows, episode number 4 and episode 159, episode 4 of Astrology Unplugged, episode 159, those two are especially focused on houses, talking about the houses. Why are the houses different than the others? What do they mean? Houses can be very confusing. It's my opinion, even today, that most of the books that have been done on the houses, I believe, are a little bit off. I think houses are going through a revolution now in terms of how we understand them. So planets and houses can be very confusing. Aspects can be even worse because you read these books about Mars opposite Saturn, and it sounds like the end of the world. And then you got Jupiter next to something, and it's the beginning of the world. And there's just all these confusing messages. So you get down and look at a sign, you look at a chart as if the planets are right now. Take a look at the planets right now. It's unbelievable. All right. There you go. Well, my God, what do you do with that? What do you do with this mess? Look, and I'll tell you right away, instantly, this is a powerful major chart right now. Why? Because you got 9 planets or so all together, all hanging from the moon in Scorpio. This is really intense. This is very much what's called a bucket handle, a bucket pattern, and the handle is moon in Scorpio, which is opposite the sun. It's opposite Mercury. Is making a T-square to Pluto. A T-square is nothing more than a triangle. It's 2 planets or more opposite each other, making a right angle to a third or fourth or more planets. And all the focus in that T-square goes to this point. And this is Pluto, which has just entered Aquarius. So what you can see already with this is on live now. This is not a static chart like last week. This chart will keep changing as time progresses through the evening. But you can see the planets are in the houses. These are the houses, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are the signs of the zodiac. So you can see already how confusing it could be to look at a chart. If you were born right now, I tell you what, you'd have a heavy duty chart. And doesn't mean you're doomed, but you would be a very special person with some very powerful aspects, especially with the sun next to Uranus. So look at what's going on. When you look at a chart and you start to understand the motion, how fast they move, your mind can see that in 3 days from now, the sun will be 1 degree away from Uranus. And in astrology, most things happen when they're a degree away. When Mars is a degree away from you, when the sun is a degree away from you, when the full moon is forming and is a degree away from perfect, these are just proven time periods when events are triggered. So you can automatically see that right now the moon's going to move on here in the next few days, but right now the tension is mounting just because the sun is approaching Uranus. So when you see the sun approaching Uranus, you can automatically tell things are kind of crazy because it's in the sign of Taurus. And Taurus doesn't want things to explode and to change. Taurus wants things to settle down. So you can see the discrepancy. And Uranus, which is going to be triggered, wants things to blow up and change wildly. So you can automatically see, just by the nature of the planets involved, how this is a crazy time right now, where part of us wants to calm things down, the other part of us wants to change things wildly. And you're not going to tell Uranus what to do. You're just not going to. It's too powerful. Uranus is going to win out. So I was thinking about all this, and I'll be talking much more about the houses and the overall diagrams of a chart. And I was thinking about going to see a doctor, the similarities. When you go see a doctor, he or she is potentially genius about the mixture of these things happening and these things happening. For instance, a doctor might see something happening here in your arm and might see something happening over here on your arm, and they just go, nothing to it. They understand. They don't have to go read a book. They understand already. However, the same doctor might see something happening here and something happening here and go, oh, that's the advanced astrology, because they understand how these 2 parts are connected and you don't. That's the disadvantage that we have as patients and the trust that we have to put in these doctors, which is a little bit scary. So astrology is very similar. And we can look at things and just go, that's no big deal. Look at that, that's not a big deal. Look at that part over there in the chart. Oh, that's not that important. And then we look at another part and go, whoa. Because in time, In time, you start to see the importance of how you read the chart. What merits what outweighs other things, and there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to keep studying. Nothing you can do. You have to keep looking at charts and looking at charts. Look at the person, look at the chart, look at the person. That's why I've done thousands of charts. And a lot of them, I just glanced at them just to see, oh, no wonder the guy's a killer. Oh, no wonder this guy's a billionaire. No wonder this guy got in trouble. And I'm looking things up all the time. I told you on my little phone on my Celeste program, just to see basically where the planets are, and I can see where the energies are coming from. So I thought that doctor's analogy really a good one because a beginning astrologer is like having a doctor that's guessing. Boy, I heard a disturbing one. I'm going to you know, by the way, I heard a disturbing one today talking with one of my friends who shares astrology with me somewhat. She was telling me about a woman that I know in the Pittsburgh area who has done psychic festivals, arranged these things, and what this woman was saying to her in her personal reading. And this woman was a perfect example of somebody that should not be reading for anybody. She should be tied up. Just saying the most horrible stuff. And if you don't know what you're doing, you're gullible to what she's saying to you. So these people, when they start to talk, I don't care what kind of quartz crystals they have hanging, I don't care what kind of incense they have burning, I don't care what they seem like. If you're with a reader and the reader doesn't feel good to you in your heart, then get out. Get out. Get out. Because he or she might be a little bit right, but the chances are they're about 99% wrong and they have ulterior motives. So, therefore, what I'm saying to you is reading takes time. And you don't have to get discouraged because if you just keep looking, you could keep doing charts, and you're going to feel stupid at first. You're going to feel stupid. Look at this and look at that. I don't know what that means. Well, no wonder. I don't either. I don't either. I see a lot of things that I don't know what it means, but I'm real close. I'm real close. And each time I'm closer, and each time I'm more accurate, and it just builds through the years. So don't be discouraged. If you look at stuff and you're not sure what it means, the smartest thing you do is put it on a back burner. Boy, this Mars Uranus sure looks troublesome, but I don't know what it means. But I know there's some kind of chaos, and you're right, and you don't know exactly what kind. Put it on the side burner. When you get back to it, it'll still be chaotic. But you'll know a little more about it because that chaos that's indicated by Mars Uranus is going to peep out in the personality over here or over here or over here. It's going to show itself. The chart reveals itself. Okay. Now, another thing I was thinking about here. I was helping the other day. I was helping Claudia with a chart of a friend, and this friend had all kinds of very intense symbols in the chart. I mean, organizations, oppositions, T squares. It was a simple sun sign, but it had planets right on the angles. And this was a very tough chart. And while I was reading the chart, Pluto was sitting on the mid of it at the moment of the reading. Pluto's sitting at the top of the chart. What do you think I did with that? I closed my book and put everything away. Because if Pluto's sitting on your midheaven, which is once every 250 years, then I suggest you're going through a very major Plutonian turning point. And I'm not going to talk about your toenails and your tissues. We're going to talk about the major house structure, what's happening to your city, what's happening to your town, the major you, big stuff. So you have to be aware when you're reading. You got to put things in perspective, and you can't put things in perspective till you know more and more about each piece, each piece, each piece. And as I said to Claudia, one of the reasons people come to you is for where the planets are right now. There's a very good chance that when I read for somebody tomorrow, that person tomorrow will have major planets on them. It's kind of like, boy, you got Rick there and he can translate this so I can finally tell you. That's what it's like. Oh, there's nobody in your room for you that can translate. Well, why bother telling you? But oh, Rick's there. He can see this, so I'll show him. I mean, I'll sit in the house with Liza and some other people, and I'll say, honey, Mars is in a third. It's opposite the bucket handle of something in Sag. And she'll go, oh, yeah. And the other person sitting there like, what the hell are they talking about? It's like another language. It is. Oh, yeah, but the family has a history of triplicate planets and mutable signs. And we go, what? She and I know what we're talking about. But you have to keep at it. So that's the point. So I was talking to Claudia about this person, and this person had a lot of things that we could talk about with this person. But the story is Pluto's sitting on the big angle. And I cannot overemphasize to you enough about the 4 angles in the chart. And I'm doing this over 40 some years. The 4 angles, the midheaven, the nadir, the ascendant, the descendant. Those 4 angles are the erections, construction points, the backbone of a chart, period. And they are made up from the time you're born. They're a big deal. And I'm really exaggerating because the more and more I do it, the more I see how what a big deal. When you got planets near those 4 angles, whether at birth or whether by transit, it's a big deal because each angle represents the next quadrant. The angle at the bottom represents houses 4, 5, and 6. The angle at the top represents houses 10, 11, 12. It's the beginning of that sector. And that's the reason why. So, Claudia will be overwhelmed at first with such an intense chart, but she'll get there. She'll get better and better. And she's already seeing points that, yeah, that's right, that's right. And she might say something that she feels a little lukewarm. And I'll say, well, I'm not sure, but she'll be real close. She'll be real close. And that's really, really good. Because what astrology is sensing and blending together multifarious archetypes. You got this theme in the chart, and I read for Linda, and Linda's got this Libra theme, but she's also got this Pluto theme. So I know Linda's got this Libra theme, and she's got this Pluto theme. So I keep that in mind. I don't try to sit with her and pop a hair out of the top hat right away. I just keep in mind she's got strong Libra background. She got strong Scorpio background. Let's keep that in mind as we investigate her life. That's how you do it. You got to constantly take the pressure off yourself, but at the same time, keep yourself actively pursuing analysis in the chart. And I'm telling you, the chart wants to give it up. The person wants to give it up. The chart wants to tell you its secrets. And the person wants you to tell them what it means. Believe me, they want to tell you. They just do. Because where else are they going to get it to interpret it? So,
Hey, Rick, and everybody else. Um, the chart that I was reading yesterday was
that
my
person,
friend.
right?
Yes, I don't know him. I know his boyfriend.
Right.
That's my friend, but I've never met this person. But what I wanted to say was the part of the reading that I was probably the most nervous about is the part where you have Mars in his natal chart, and Uranus is about 2 degrees away. And at the end of
You mean
May, it's
transiting Uranus?
transiting
You have to
Uranus
be
is about,
specific or people will get confused.
yeah. So in
Transiting
his,
Uranus is
yep,
approaching his natal Mars.
yes.
Right.
And we determined that that's probably going to be sometime at the end of May, around May
That's
29th.
correct.
So that was the part that I was the most nervous about. How I was going to vocalize it.
That's right.
And but I did it, and I told him, it's a really important time. It's a really good time for you to really um express any aggression, to just let it out. Your
Get things
masculine
off your
side,
chest.
let it
Right.
out. And he said to me, I can't believe you're saying this to me. I just joined a class where we're all expressing our masculine side. I was like, oh my
See,
God.
see, now what
Yeah,
I'm telling you is the class is secondary. The planet's primary. It's not,
yes, yeah,
oh, wow, look where the planet is. No, the planet's there. Look what he's doing. And if
yeah.
he's not doing it, if he's not taking a class like that, what does that mean?
He's suppressing it.
He's suppressing.
Right. And
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that's the whole point. So I've
it
told
was
one,
so, yeah,
I'm coming back to you, but I've told people when the planets go over, you either feel it and you use it right or wrong, or you kind of use it, but you kind of don't, which is kind of normal because people are not sure. Is this something I'm imagining? You kind of use it, but you kind of don't. Or nothing happens. And that's the scary kind because you got this tremendous movement in your magma down in your core and nothing's bubbling to the surface. So what do you think
right.
that means? Fissures. Something's going to crack somewhere. Excellent talk so far. Go ahead. I got more to say about this guy. Go ahead, Claudia.
So he then said to me, I've been very aware that I really just hold back on my anger. And now I don't want to. And that's really,
Exactly.
and I wanted to do cartwheels because
Exactly.
I was nervous
Exactly.
about that. Yeah, I was, you know, internally I was thinking, I don't, I'm hoping that he was feeling this, but maybe he's not, and I didn't know. He's been doing a lot of work on himself, so I was so delighted, and I told him, he's absolutely, that's the right way to go. To really express it, dance it out, write it out, yell about it.
Right.
But he was definitely so receptive to that whole message. I mean, he was receptive to everything else we talked about before,
Now
but
let's stop for a moment and remind people this guy had a bucket pattern to, in other words, the main planet in the chart was Mars.
yes,
He had a
and he
bucket pattern,
was,
Mars,
yeah,
everything else over here. Here's Mars, and here's Uranus going over Mars. Here is transiting Uranus once every 84 years, going over the main planet in his chart, which is really, really dangerous for car
yeah,
wrecks, getting shot, car wrecks, getting mugged. Yes. But this guy was open enough to listen to me because I know what I'm saying. This guy was open enough to these energies that he created a reading with her. He did.
mm-hmm,
If he were closed to allowing this energy up and through, he wouldn't have found her. She wouldn't have found me. She would have fumbled through it. She would have missed the point. He would have stuffed it. Something bad would happen. Now, this is not a guarantee that he's going to do well during this time, but this is a guarantee that he's going to do better because he stopped suppressing. He was suppressing because of fear or whatever reason that you dig up by talking to him. But this kind of guy, you're poking him, and all of a sudden he's going to start poking back.
Yeah.
That's the story. And what you did was excellent, just excellent. And you were like his flying angel. You came out of nowhere and you verified this. You have to remember, and I know I'm getting fanatical now, and I just don't care because it's just that damn real and strong.
Yeah.
Here's
Yeah.
a guy that without astrology, he would say, and probably is saying, I was beside myself. I don't know what was coming over me. I felt like my fingers were in the wall socket. Blah, 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 blah. The whole litany of things they say, which is exactly what this means. And what it really means astrologically is this part of him that he's suppressed for so long because he's always playing safe. That's why he's suppressing it. If we have electricity going around, well, shit, some light bulb's going to turn on. Then we got to deal with that.
Yeah.
No, this guy instead found the courage inside to override his natal chart and start allowing this through. My dad was a very rigid Capricorn. He was near 0 degrees Capricorn. And my wife and I at the time, we watched transiting Uranus. Transiting Uranus panda, but it's very volatile. We watched transiting Uranus get near 0 degrees Capricorn. What do you think we did? Nothing we could do. We knew all hell was going to break loose. This is a possible heart attack. This is a possible aneurysm. This is a possible stroke. Because here comes the bunker buster. And he ain't going to let the thing break. Just like clockwork. It came, he got very sick. He had things like strokes, he had seizures. It's not the outer world bringing seizures to my dad. It's he's bringing himself a seizure, but he doesn't know how to process it. It's just a seizure is just another one of these shoots that I talk about. Only this shoots real fast and is wild. That's all it is. He could very well use Uranus like many people do, and they say it was the most exciting time of my life because the shoot came through and they got on and they wrote it like Jack and the Beanstalk, and there they are, ooh, in a different world, and it was fun and amazing. But with my dad did not have the background. He had the Capricorn nature of suppressing, and he did not have the ability to understand this. So the body did this to me. Oh, isn't that a shame? What his body did to him. Look what happened to him. Not true. It's not true. That's what's so beautiful about what Claudia is doing, because she's learning, and she gets into one of her early charts here. And this is a very difficult chart, and she nails it. She nails it. And talked to me, and I told her, what's the issue here? She knew right away. She knew right away not to be the old astrologer with him, not to talk to him about, oh, I'm going to warn you about car wrecks. I'm going to warn you about this stuff. She was smart enough to know that Uranian shoot was coming up through him, and he's not going to understand it. He's going to look for confirmation. It's going to feel crazy. It's something you cannot control.
Yeah.
And she turned it on right away, and she knew that. Now, later on, she'll have much more to say to a guy like that, because it's a very advanced happening. But here's the ruler of his chart being hit by the wild-ass planet Uranus, while Pluto's sitting on top. Do you think this guy wants same old now? Well, that sun sign does. That sun sign wants same old, because same old is safe. Nothing happens. It's all repressed. Nothing happens. Now, with Pluto up there
Right.
with transiting Uranus, that's why he brought him to her.
Yeah. He's
That's
a
why
Cancer.
I get so excited because I see this world. It's a whole
Yeah.
dimension that most people don't know about. Now, you guys sitting there, Linda, all of you, you know about because you've seen enough of what it's done in your chart. So that's excellent what you did. Just excellent. And the only thing I would add to that is to the guy, if you're feeling like doing something kind of crazy, go ahead and do it. Now, don't jump off a bridge. But if you're
Right.
feeling like going dancing and trying a new dance that you never tried before, or you feel like saying something to somebody that you haven't said, you've been holding it back, then go ahead. That you want to err on the side of green light,
Right. Right.
not red light. So
Yeah.
that's what all these archetypes are about. And when you talk about Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, you're only talking about four energies. So it's really wonderful what you're able to do. Plus, you were able during your discussion, I'm sure there's a lot more to talk about Pluto on this midheaven. That means for once in your life, you better stand up and make your position in the world or you're going to die. That's what
Yeah.
that means. Stand up and make your claim in this world or you will die. Because Pluto's not messing around.
Yeah.
Now, I'll
And
bet you somewhere in him when he was talking to you, he was feeling this way.
I think so. I could feel like he is,
Exactly.
it's unfolding for him, and it's you can feel it. And I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea.
That's
He's a
right.
really sweet man.
Yeah, of
He's a
course
very
he is.
and
Yeah.
so I had no idea what to expect. I only knew that he seemed just like I've seen pictures of him. Anyway, long story short, thanks for helping me with that, because that was probably the one thing that I was a little bit nervous about, how I was going to
Well, you
vocalize it.
handled it really well. And I will tell you without that doubt, 10 years from now, he will look back and see that as the biggest turning point in his life was talking to you. Because when you
Well,
affirm what's going on in the idiotic, crazy mind of ours, what do we think of our mind? Our mind's always arguing. It's just crazy talk. And
yeah,
we're not sure. Does that one make sense? Well, he's a new one. Where'd he come from? There's all this arguing going on. And when somebody comes from out of nowhere and says, hey, this one that's been talking to you, he's not nuts. This guy's really making sense. He's right. What kind of value that does to him? Like that letter that you wrote to me, John, has been on my refrigerator for 9 months now about the fishes. You said there was something I do in this show that helps validate. In other words, things are coming up through you and you're not sure what it is, but it's there and it matches what I'm saying. And it provides you with a service. How did you say it? You're muted.
I don't remember how I said it. At the time, it was something that came over me, and I don't recall it really well. You,
Well, it was something like I validated a part of you that you always knew was there.
yeah, that's the idea.
Right. And that you said that true and real astrology can be that valuable to people when there's no agenda, when you're seeing purely, and when you have a real discussion going on with the client. Well, that's excellent. Okay,
Good.
very good. Let's go back to this chart now. Good job, Claudia. You are to be applauded. Okay, now in this chart right now, okay, you can see that the moon is in Scorpio at the 5th degree. It's in the 12th house right now. It's been rising. The moon has been rising the last couple hours. Okay. And near midnight, it'll be at the top of the chart. The whole chart will turn. The planets will come south. So throughout the day, hold on. Okay, so we're coming back and we've changed subjects to talk about tomorrow's eclipse, which is really similar to tonight's chart anyway. So here's the moment of the eclipse tomorrow. Okay. So you can see that the moon's still in Scorpio, but the moon has gone from 5 degrees down to 14 degrees. So the eclipse is tomorrow in Pittsburgh at 1:34 in the afternoon. Okay, this bucket doesn't change much, but the moon has moved from 5 degrees to 14 degrees. So when you're reading a chart, you have to have in mind how fast are these planets moving. Like I said, the next 3-4 days, the sun's going to get closer to Uranus. 5 years from now, Pluto's still going to be in this area. Eris is still going to be in this area. Doesn't move fast. Jupiter will have gone around 5 signs in 5 years. So you have to have that in your eyeball as you're looking at a chart. You have to see that you have to see that you're seeing a fraction of time as they're moving. Now, tomorrow's eclipse, of course, is with the sun opposite the moon, which is a lunar eclipse, or the sun is with the moon, and that's a solar eclipse. Now, when an eclipse happens, and I've told people about this so many times, it's not the lunation that's the big deal. A lunation is a full moon, a new moon, an eclipse. It's not the lunation that's the big deal. Oh, there's a harvest moon tonight, front page. Oh, it's red. We haven't seen a red moon in 7 years. So what? What matters is, where is the eclipse happening? What planet, if any, is it next to? And is it hitting a point in your chart? That's why some eclipses come by and all hell breaks loose. Other eclipses come by, it's a walk in the park. Nothing happens. See, people don't know, so they don't talk about it. And that's where astrology gets a bad name. Well, it's inconsistent. How can it be important here? It wasn't important there. I just told you why. Is it with Uranus? Well, it's with Uranus the next few days. What do you think that's going to mean? Is it on your natal Pluto? Is it square to your natal Neptune? What's happening in your chart? What's happening in the United States chart? Very complex. So what did we see? What did we see in this chart? Erica wanted to see this eclipse for tomorrow. Look at the eclipse. Now, I'll tell you how it works, Erica. It's a little confusing, but it won't take you long to get this. The eclipse is at 14, almost 15 degrees. The eclipse is 3 degrees before Uranus. It's going to be in Taurus. You give eclipses, you give transits 5 degrees. The event will happen when the trigger is 1 degree away. The trigger is usually the sun or Mars. Those are your triggers. Watch out for Mars. Watch out for Mars. I keep telling you to chisel it into your forehead. Watch out for Mars. When we get our next t-shirt, we'll do that on the back. Keep your eye on Mars. So the eclipse is happening at 14, 15, 16, 17. But when that sun moves forward and becomes lined up 1 degree away from Uranus, that's when all the impact, that's when all the tremors from this explosion from this eclipse will be released. When it's 1 degree away from Uranus. And if you have a problem tomorrow with something around those degrees of Taurus, then you had better be kind of careful. Careful driving, Uranus is always, Mars Uranus is always careful driving, careful you don't let somebody shoot you. Okay, careful around guns, careful around knives, careful with your mouth. Careful with your mouth. Oh my God, is this stupid? See, I'm born with sun opposite Uranus, so crazy stuff happens to me. I'm driving in LA. And this is just after the O.J. Simpson trial. And this white Ford Bronco comes out of nowhere. Honest to God, this white Ford Bronco comes out of nowhere and cuts me off. And I started to show him one of my favorite fingers. And I said, I don't think you should show that finger while you're on an entrance ramp in LA here. And there was an eclipse going on that day. But I learned to keep my hands to myself. So that was kind of an intelligent choice. But tomorrow, with the sun approaching Uranus, we know there's going to be an explosion. And what do we know? It's all opposite the moon. So what do you think is going to happen to all these emotions that you've been struggling with for the last month, trying to contain them? Say something, contain them. Say something, contain them. No, say something. No, contain them. What do you think is going to happen to this guy she read for yesterday? You think it's a coincidence? Now, we don't have an answer for this guy, and it really might be dangerous if he explodes around somebody, but at least he knows what he's got to deal with. I've got to deal with my family from me shoving emotions down all this time. And they put me in a box. They disregard me. They don't take me seriously. They take me lightly. And I don't want to be taken lightly anymore. Uranus, I'm a self. Do you understand? That's why you don't have to be a magician about translating tomorrow's eclipse. Tomorrow's eclipse is going to have a lot to do with, I'm going to a funeral in the family on that day. How's that? I'm not going to even mention any more about that.
Wait, you're going to a funeral tomorrow?
Yeah, with a family member.
Oh,
And emotions are involved, let's just say.
yeah.
A major matriarch in the family passed away. You think that's a coincidence? You guys are carrying the secret. Thank you, Rachel. You guys are carrying the secrets. You don't have a lock on them yet. You're not exactly sure what to say, but look at the chart. Here's the eclipse. Here's Uranus. The event is not going to happen while they're 3 degrees away. The event is going to happen when it gets close. And it will actually be more explosive when the sun is a degree from Uranus than it will be on the day when the sun and Uranus are exact. That's from years of watching these things. Now, sun Uranus, on that day, it could be very explosive, yes, but it's usually when it gets a degree away, it's like the planet can't handle it anymore and they explode. Okay, so we know that in all of us tomorrow, we've all been building emotional tension inside of ourselves to release emotional truth. Uranus moon combinations are about say what you got to say, get it off your chest. Now, if you've been repressing for a long time, then it comes out real goofy and real dangerous, and you put your foot in your mouth, and it might not be too good. But even that's better than continuing to repress. There ain't nothing in astrology hates more than repression. It just doesn't deal with you pushing energies down. So let's go back to the chart. All right. So let's say somebody's born tomorrow during this eclipse. Well, what I'm going to notice right away, I'm going to notice that the moon is really, really important in this chart because it's out there by itself. It's the handle of this big bucket. I'm going to look and see Leo's rising, moon in Scorpio, sun in Taurus, as I told you last week. Very stubborn combinations. Person's going to be very stubborn. And the moon is square to Pluto. Or is it now? Back when it was at 5 degrees, it was square to Pluto, which was yesterday. So we know we got really big emotional issues. We know this person's probably brilliant. And here's the sun sitting right between the midpoint of Mercury and Uranus. Mercury and Uranus are symbolic of genius mind, and the sun is right there in the middle of it. Now, this is a Taurus, and Tauruses are not usually known for being geniuses. But when the sun is right where with Mercury and Uranus, you got yourself genius potential. So all these things keep building as you read. All these things keep building as you read a chart. Now, when Claudia goes back to her client and she finds out what happened with the Mars Uranus theme, and she talks about to him throughout the year, what she's going to see is how did the Pluto theme unfold? How is the Pluto theme unfolding? Pluto themes are not overnight. Pluto themes are eras, big eras. And he's going to tell you in a year from now, oh, Claudia, I just stopped effing around with people. Or something like that. That's what he's going to say. Pluto's really good about stopping effing around. It's just really the planet that just gets fed up with it. Because why? That's what I've tried so hard to teach you in these 6 years. Pluto wants you to take ownership of your power. What do you think's happening in the United States? We're falling apart. Why? Because we've been abusing our power. I've been telling you this for years. Pluto wants its power used, but it wants it used for the good of mankind. It's an altruistic planet. And if you've been abusing that energy, like picking on little countries and stuff, Pluto will do you in. It will do you in. It will wipe you off the face. Pluto won't have it. And Pluto's partnering as it travels. Pluto's partnering with Eris. What's Eris about? We're not going to have it anymore. That's why this whole thing's going on. And I watch these other astrologers. Oh, you have watched Venus this weekend. It'll be exciting for you and your boyfriend. Oh, you've got Jupiter this weekend. And you want to play the lotto with numbers starting with 7. Forget it. That's not what's going on. If you can't read a chart, then don't read it. Don't fill people's minds up with this stuff. Pluto is traveling with Eris. Why do you think the Earth is full of all these subjects everywhere? Everybody's talking about near the end, cleaning up the climate. What are we going to do that we're skidding near the end? That's where you're hearing it everywhere. And we told you about this 10 years ago. This is why. But at the same time that we warned about it, we also told everybody that your power is arriving. And when your power is arriving, you had better be ready to use it appropriately. Because you can bullshit people, but you cannot bullshit Pluto. You just can't. I'll give you a million examples. It knows what it's doing. So that's why you're seeing so many people are making very serious efforts now to contain nukes, to contain bad climate stuff, to warn people, to come to the table and start behaving and start settling with peace. People are talking and they're very serious. And then there's this other faction that just la-di-da-da. La-di-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. And you all know it ain't true. Something's going to happen. And this eclipse is not a real pleasant harbinger. This eclipse really could be a turning point. So when you're reading charts, let's keep going back and forth. Complex, simple, complex, simple. We learned a lot about the energies in astrology, whether this guy or this chart tomorrow, by looking at the planets in the signs. We've learned a lot by what relative house they're in. Those houses change every couple of hours. And we've learned a lot by the aspects. Now, I want to talk about aspects, and I don't have the number in front of me, but there is an Astrology Unplugged that just says aspects on it, and you will want to watch that. The trouble with aspects is, and that's what's so marvelous, we told you last week, the must-have book that you got to have when you're going to learn about aspects is Stephen Arroyo's book called Chart Interpretation Handbook. The Stephen Arroyo Chart Interpretation Handbook. And what Stephen did, he's older now and he's retired. He's written enough books. He took a very famous book from the 50s written by a German, Ebertin, who tackled the problem in the 50s of the combination of stellar influences. He wrote a book called The Combination of Stellar Influences. This became the master book that everybody had to have, and it wasn't particularly well written. It had some brilliant stuff in it, plus it was in German and poorly translated. But he tackled the problem finally of what does this planet do when it's with this planet? What's the positive and negative? And then he wrote a third planet. What is the potential for this third planet? What does it mean when it's in between these two planets? He wrote the positive and negative. So this is where this came from. And it was a scary book. It was one of the old astrology books where it was overly negative and it warned people and it scared people, but it gave you an idea. And it was the handbook we all had for a long time until this one came out in the probably early 80s. And this one is very sane. This Arroyo book, being a Libra, he's very sane. He's very down to earth. He tells you Venus and Mars, positive, whether it's Venus and Mars in your natal chart, whether it's Venus and Mars by transit, whether it's my Mars opposite your Venus. If I'm trying to translate and combine those two energies, and that's all you ever do in astrology, you try to translate by blending energies. If I'm trying to blend Saturn and Venus, and by God, you see it all the time. Well, what's the positive that could come out of it? Well, it's kind of a stability in the relationship and a kind of stamina, yeah. And it's kind of a Saturn-Venus, it's kind of a formal relationship, yeah. And on the negative side, well, it's kind of uptight and kind of afraid to show your emotion, yeah. It's kind of afraid to open up, yeah. You see, I told you, you have to understand what these planets mean when they combine, and you don't have to be a genius. And by understanding what Saturn's like, what Venus is like, you can start to get the idea. Now, Claudia alerted me that she's going to read this guy's chart, and she alerted me to the fact that I believe he had Mars and Saturn involved, whether it was Mars, Saturn opposite, or whatever. I mean, that's a really, really good question. She said, what am I going to tell this guy? We've got a Mars, Saturn opposition. Well, what do you think? You got a bunch of green light and you got a bunch of red light in the same chart. That's driving with your brakes on. That's driving with your brakes on. What do you think is going to happen to your brakes? What do you think is going to happen to your ability to drive smoothly? So you don't have to be a genius. So she started to understand that there may be a sense of overcaution as he went forward, or stuffing the self down. You see how it works? So you pick up Arroyo's book, the handbook, and he will tell you the positive things that are likely to come out of a Mars-Saturn combination. I didn't say conjunction. It could be a square, could be a trine, could be an opposition. That's what an aspect is. So the early books, they make too much of this aspect stuff. Oh, the square's really bad, but the trine's really good. You got to stay away from that stuff. Okay? That's why I advise you to watch my video. I don't know which number it is. If you go to my website, starself.com, right in the middle, it says, click here if you'd like to see any of these 300, 400 videos. If you click there, you'll see a long list, chronological, of all these subjects. And you can scroll through it and read about what you want, or go watch a video of you guys. Go watch one of the unplugged episodes focusing on that subject. So what are we saying here? We're saying that we started by telling you, you got these 10 planets, and they're in one of the 12 signs. That tells you a lot about the kind of energy you have. And they're in one of the 12 houses, which is, where is it coming out in life? Is it coming out with your brother? Is it coming out at your job? Is it coming out in your marriage? Where's that energy being expressed? That's what the houses do. Then you got aspects. Mars is opposite Saturn. Mars is square to Saturn. Mars is next to Saturn. And you're going to have all three situations. They're all going to be similar, but yet a little bit different. Okay, so that's where you take this subject that we're talking about. Why is astrology so difficult? One of the main reasons is a misunderstanding of how to read aspects. Okay, if I've got my Saturn opposite your Mars, hey, please, Rick, I'm dating this girl named Claudia. Please take a look at my chart and her and see what you see. Okay, well, Rick's chart got Saturn here and her Mars is opposite. Well, what's that mean? Oh, that means that Rick's going to stifle her. He's going to stop her every time she tries to be herself. That's what the old books tell you. That ain't true. What if it says Rick keeps her from going off the deep end all the time? He's always there catching her when she's about to flip over the cliff. Save your energy. Yes. So you see, all these energies have two sides to them. Some energies tend towards negative results more than positive than other energies. Yes. But that's why you have to start. You have to have at least something in your bag when you're reading. You have to have a basic understanding. Well, this woman I just read for has Jupiter next to Neptune. Well, what does that mean? Well, the book says she's talking to demons. She's not talking to demons. She might be talking to demons, but she probably isn't. But she might be talking to Snow White, and it really is a demon. Who knows? Well, you know, something's going on. You see my point? So when you start to read, you start to blend. For example, let's look at tomorrow's chart, the eclipse chart. Now we know for sure, if it's for a birth chart, somebody's going to be born tomorrow. Somebody's going to be brilliant tomorrow. Somebody's going to be age 3.5, solar arcs. Somebody age 4, age 3.5 is going to have a real big shock in their life. That's for sure. Somebody's going to have Uranus opposite the moon. They're going to be raised inside a school bus. What? They're going to be raised in an abandoned church. What? Unusual home. You don't have to be a genius. Just start putting the keywords together. Okay, this person's going to have Pluto opposite Mars. Well, this is 0 degrees. This is 22, so it's 8 degrees. So it's very wide. Thank goodness. You don't want Pluto opposite Mars too close, because that's a violent streak, or a bossy streak, or heavy-duty, ham-fisted, heavy-handed. And if you wait a few more days, Pluto and Mars are going to get closer. So somebody that's born a week from now is going to have Mars really close to opposing Pluto. And that's really very dangerous. You got to keep an eye on that. And then they're making a T-square over to what? 21, 0. They're making a T-square to Eris and to Jupiter. Well, this tells me these two say, blow it up, and Jupiter and Uranus say, hell yeah, blow it up. That's what this says. That's what this says. Sure, blow it up. And sometimes when you affirm and say, blow it up, sometimes that's the best thing to do. And a lot of times it ain't. That's why you got to keep your cool when you're reading. But you can see, just with the few planets we looked at, how this chart is also a major statement of a world turning point in the next few days. You know, I walked into a bar, an inn. I walked into an inn in England when I was visiting. Everybody went, hey, you chap, this is by the American beer. Ooh, that's Corey McGinnis. You know, and I said, my God, I don't know how to act. And they said, why? I said, I'm used to being in America. You walk in a bar in America, you don't look at anybody. Who are you looking at? They said, really? He said, really? He said, oh my God, come on over here, we'll sing you a song, bud. You know, that old spirit, you know, that you want to have. So these energies can come about in so many ways. They can manifest in so many ways. And what Liza and I are always talking about is what's going to be the ruler. What, you know how you grow a tomato plant and you put a stick through it, you know, it grows along that stick. What's going to be our guide as we start to go forward? We don't have the guides, the heroes, the role models that we did in the 50s and 60s, even if we were lied to. We don't have them there. Everybody's like on their own and blaming each other. So this is a really serious turning point. And also, when you look at a chart like this is the kind of chart that will start producing heroes. The need itself will create the heroes. They'll come out. They'll feel it in their own way. They'll come out like these teenagers that come up with these inventions to clean the ocean. You hear all these different marvelous things that kids are doing in junior high to bring people together and help to raise money, et cetera, genius ideas. They come, what do they say? Invention is the result of need. I forget what it said.
Need is the mother of invention.
That's it. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And all that really is different kinds of stems coming out of the central plant, mixing with others. Some mix well, some don't mix well. Some strangle each other, some avoid each other. That's what you call life. And that's what astrology is a map and a calendar of those shoots coming out, whether they're coming out of us, whether they're coming out of your marriage, whether they're coming out of your family, etc. So when you take this recent course of last week and this week, and you're thinking about how hard it is to do astrology, and it is, don't worry about the other stuff. Start to read the chart and say to yourself, well, this Jupiter is opposite this guy's Uranus. What does that mean? Well, you say, I don't know. You pick up Arroyo's book and it talks about sudden growth, possibly wild growth, possibly crazy episodes. So you got this kind of crazy energy that could be real good. It could be real sudden. It might be too fast. Who knows? But you got to keep your eye on it. So you look at that part of the chart and you keep that in mind. You keep that in mind. Then when you see transiting Mars come by, hitting that point, what do you think's going to happen? A picnic? No. What do you think's going to happen? If somebody's born, I knew a woman that had this. Sun and moon at the bottom in Aquarius, Saturn and Pluto at the top in Leo. Sun and moon at the bottom in Aquarius, brilliant, sensitive. Saturn and Pluto at the top in Leo. What do you think is going to happen when that axis gets hit? She was very arrogant, very, very smart. She passed away recently. But boy, was she touchy. She was touchy. What did you mean by that? Didn't mean nothing. I'm trying to talk to her, but she was just ultra touchy about you possibly disagreeing with me with the Leo stuff at the top. So when you're studying yourself or your relatives or your loved ones, whatever, you just keep working. They're works in progress. They're works in progress. I'm studying my own chart 50 some years or whatever. I don't know. I'm still learning about it. Oh, I do have a midpoint there. Look at that. No wonder. And the way you learn more about it is you suspect things. Right, Claudia? You just suspect. I suspect something's going on here. And don't put yourself down. Make a note. I suspect this. A week later, I can see where that was crazy. 2 weeks later, that was a good idea. And then 3 weeks later, it gets hit by something. That's when you can really tell. It's like a particle accelerator. Why do we have particle accelerators that blow each of the electrons up, etc.? To learn more about what's in it. That's why we do it. Make them go faster and faster and faster, more collisions. And then we see what kind of muons come out of it. That's kind of like watching the transits. If you got a relative that you're looking at their Mars something in their chart, and you're not sure what it means, and you read Arroyo, and you got an idea what the positive and negative is, then go back in time just with the main planets, Uranus and Saturn. Just go back in time and see when Uranus hit it, and Saturn came around and hit it. What happened to him? And there will be an event. Guaranteed. That's why this guy that got his reading with Claudia yesterday, he was so surprised, but she wasn't. So the one more thing I'll mention, then we'll open it for some questions. I used to give people this example, a silly example, but it's a good example for understanding how off the wall Uranus can be. Just crazy energy, does weird things. So I'm reading your chart, and I'm telling you, I see in July, next July, I'll give you the date. That's how Uranus hits. The Uranus is going to hit so-and-so in your chart. Let's say Venus, which is musical. And they want to know what it means. I say, well, I'm not sure what it means, but next July, somebody's going to start playing jazz music in your basement. What? Next July, somehow somebody's going to start playing jazz music that you've never heard in your basement. Well, what's going to happen? Well, I don't know, because that's up to you how you deal with it. Shoot. So next June comes along, and you're starting to hear the and you're getting closer to July, and you're starting hearing this music, and you're going, what the hell's going on? Then you go, wow, Rick told me on my calendar here a year ago that I'd be hearing jazz music in the basement. That's symbolic. It's not really jazz music, but symbolic that free spirit inside one's out. That's all. So that person has three choices. As that music gets really lined up during that July. One, hopefully, they start dancing. They start enjoying the music. It's a new thing to them. That's Uranus. It puts a new layer on their ears. They hear things differently. Wow, isn't this exciting? Two, like most people, they kind of dance to it. They kind of bitch about it. They kind of want to hear it, but they don't. Off and on and off and on. That's kind of most humans are. And I told you part three is the person who Uranus goes over, the music is playing, and they don't hear anything. That's bad news. That's very bad news because they've got major channels turned off inside. I don't care who they're married to. I don't care what country they're in. It doesn't matter anything. They've got major blockages inside. And their own Uranus can't get through. That's trouble. That's strokes, etc. So that's how all the planets work. Some play jazz music, some play heavenly theme music, some play mystical music. That's what it's all about. So that's how you take the mystery out of reading a chart. You inch up on it, you start to learn more and more about the aspects. You don't get too bent out of shape when you read a fearful aspect in a book. You watch the transits come by and you realize they have a time period when they're coming, when they're peak, when they're going to move on. You mainly focus on four: Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn. Those are the main ones. Jupiter comes by, a lot of good things happen, maybe a couple untoward things happen, then it leaves. Mars comes by, gets all crazy, and then leaves. That's why you watch the major four. Unless you're going to start focusing on Eris, then it gets complicated. So, as you learn astrology and you start to go back, like many of you have, and you're listing what happened to you in 1964, what happened to you in 1985 when this planet hit, you'll start to get a list and you'll start to see, well, no wonder my life went that way. It wasn't the planet, it was how I reacted to it. And that's how you get better at it. So I want to open up the last few minutes to questions to you that are related to this topic. Does this make sense to you tonight? Linda says, yeah. I always like to hear from Linda. Linda's a really good paraphraser. Please paraphrase for us, Linda.
Oh, I was just thinking about the last thing you said about it's not always about the planet, but how you react to it. And to me, that's been a lot of my experience working with you, with my own chart, that, you know, things always have there's always the positive potential, and then there's the negative potential. And if you're aware, then it's like when you said yesterday, watch your mouth. Well, I'm going to be around all the big wigs tomorrow. I'm just going to zip it.
Zip it.
I'm zipping it because there's always things I would love to say to them. I'm just not going to do it, you know? And so, I mean, I think it's a lot of it. And you look at, you know, you look in an eclipse, you know, good things can happen and not good things can happen. But a lot of that's going to be, how are you dealing with your chart as a general thing? I mean, you taught me a long time ago that if you're cleaning your basement,
Yeah.
you're going to be okay with Pluto. I mean, you know, that you were trying, when
Well,
you're trying to get
If you're
things.
trying to, right.
Yeah. You know, I mean, that doesn't mean nothing bad is ever going to happen, but, you
Well,
know,
I have to tell people something here. I'm going to interrupt you. Linda has been a student of mine for a long time, and she has dealt with these things exceptionally well. Let's rewind and go 10 years, 15 years ago. I'm not even sure. I think it's 2006.
that'd be right, probably.
She came to me in a reading. She was obviously very smart. She was obviously very new to astrology. She learned the archetypal senses of these things very quickly. She filled in the blanks of her life very quickly because she knew that something did. She put the planets in their place. And she went to town. She started cleaning up her life. She started getting rid of the things that she didn't want. She started keeping what she did want. She started owning her power. I told you she's Libra and Scorpio. She kept her cool. She kept her Libra balance. She kept her professionalism, but she no longer overcompromised, which is the weakness of Libras. She spoke her truth and put a smile at the end. That's how you get away with murder. If you're Libra or Sag, speak your truth and then smile. That's it. That's the secret. No, I don't mean real murder. I got my lawyer right here. But no, she really did beautifully. And through time, she's just gained knowledge and gained more and more information. And she's gotten better at it and understanding. And she really understands. She understands it to the point where I would trust her if she were reading for a new person. I would trust her to at least give the main message to the person and for not putting their foot in their mouth and scaring the hell out of the person.
Oh, good grief.
Well, that's not easy, and I don't always trust people. And I just trusted Claudia to go ahead and start reading for people, and she's doing very well. So you're exactly right. And I think having your Libra background really has aided you because it's given you the sense of let's keep our cool while we're doing this. Let's keep our cool, you know.
Well,
So kudos to you, Linda.
Well, one of the things you told me, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, because we focused on different aspects of my chart at different times for, you know, for whatever reason. And I have that moon in Scorpio on the ascendant. And then at the top of the chart, I have Mars in Leo right next to Venus in Virgo.
Yeah.
And what you said to me, and I'm still working on this, was that one of the problems I have with emotion. I mean, I have a lot of emotion in me, but it never doesn't come out because that Venus in Virgo is always saying, shh,
It's not that it doesn't come out, it's got to contend with that Venus drill sergeant.
And so, you know, the task then is to becoming more aware of the depth of my emotional nature, the
Right.
Scorpio in the first house kind of thing.
That's right.
But also the advantages of having that Venus in Virgo, who's a very ladylike little presence that can help me zip it sometimes.
That's right. When you need to zip it, you zip it. That's
mean,
exactly right.
You know, and so it could not work well if those two energies are, you know, not balancing well, or I'm not aware of them. So I think that when we talk about aspects and we talk about you know, combining planetary energies, that when people get readings, they need to pay attention to what the astrologer is saying and
Yeah.
write it down,
It's
and then
exactly-
remember it when difficulties
It's
come up.
not a novelty.
Right, exactly. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and there's like probably a dozen things you've said over the years that are like little touchstones for me. And when I find myself, you know, in a situation where I'm maybe not in the best of shape or not doing the right thing, I think, you know, let's just go look at where the planets are. And then you see, oh yeah, that's that. Yeah.
Well, you're all doing very well, and you are to be very commended because you've done excellent in the scheme of things. And I know in the Pittsburgh area, we got about 20 people that have gone through our training and have done really well, and really vast differences in their professions and backgrounds. But it's so wonderful to watch because everybody comes up with their own bent on things. And really, when you keep watching this theme of these shoots coming up, it just fills it all in, makes it understand. What do you think, Kathy? You think we're all crazy?
You think, oops.
Do you
We're
think
all what?
you think we're all crazy?
No, I don't at all. I'm in good company if you are.
Well,
There's
thank
just a lot for me to learn. I'm still just such a newbie at all of this,
okay,
but I'm feeling more motivated to like look up my grandchildren's charts and
that's good.
that type of stuff. So anyway, that's my summer endeavor.
Well, very
So-
good, very good. And when you get a little piece, it doesn't make sense, make a little note. Say, find out more about this. You're not going to look at their chart and understand it all. You're just not.
Yeah, I understand.
Say,
Yeah,
ask
I
Rick
understand.
about this. Read more about this one. And also, you might see Jupiter, Uranus today in your chart and interpret it totally different 10 years from now. These things move. They have the gall to move on us.
Imagine that.
And they got the god darn gall to keep changing right in front of our eyes. Well,
As the world turns.
next week's lesson will be called "Nobody Said It Would Be Easy." Now you're doing very well, and that's why I'm cutting it off here, because I wanted to show you on purpose that you're basically talking about planets in science. You're going to learn more and more through time. Planets in houses, and planets are fighting each other. Aspects to me are like two guys on the stage. Are they close and fighting? Are they far apart and out of tune? What are they doing? Are they beautifully harmonious? That's what the aspects are like. Those are your main characters of your Shakespearean sonnet here. Okay?
All right.
Thanks, everybody. I'm not sure what next week will be,
Thank you,
but we
Rick.
shall see. Everybody be careful through this eclipse and keep your eyes open. Tell me next week what you find. Okay?
Absolutely.
Shelby
All
says
right.
good night.
Have a safe
Good
one,
night,
yes.
Night,
Shelby.
Shelby. Night, Rick. Night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.